Welcome back to another episode of Ohms Under the Hammer. This is episode 4 in a series where I'm filming 4 new build houses and the process of building them from start to finish. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, I'll put a link to episodes 1, 2 and 3. In the last episode, episode 3, I showed the foundations, retaining walls and the drainage. And in today's episode, episode 4, I'm now in South Wales at Target Timber Systems. And you can see from behind me, there's lots of woodwork here. These houses are actually being built out of a timber frame, closed panel structure. And I'm going to take you on inside into the factory. We've kindly been offered to have a tour of the factory to see the process of exactly how timber frame properties are built. And I'll show you my panels, which are all ready to go. They're actually being delivered in a couple of days to site. And I'm going to talk through the advantages of why I chose timber frame over standard construction. I'm really excited to show this process to you. Follow me through. Right, so I'm inside the factory here at Target Timber Systems. And behind me here, we've got a little small model of the way the timber frame is manufactured. And I'm going to take you around and show you how they're putting everything together. But here behind me, I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk through, this is a vapor barrier on the external part of the timber frame. You then have, not sure if you can see that there, but you then have a sheet of OSB board, structural OSB board, 9mm, followed by 140mm timber stud. And then you have your PIR insulation. On this project, we've gone for 120mm of PIR insulation, and then we've got a breathable membrane on the inside, followed by these 46mm service battens. So this structure here is, if you remember from the last video, I showed the block upstand. This is the structure that's actually going to sit on the block upstand. And then you'll then have a 50mm cavity and an outer skin of brickwork on the back. Now, a few things to mention about timber frame and why we've gone for this structure. Essentially, by taking this structure here, we are getting improved airtightness and we are having a really good level of thermal insulation. This is a closed panel system. It's not an open panel. The way that they fit the insulation here in this factory is above and beyond what many other factories will do. This particular company has a gold standard rating and they get audited in terms of the way that they fit the insulation and the process. So it's top notch, it's approved by all of the new build warranty providers and it's checked and it's accredited. And that's the reason we've chose timber frame when we took careful decisions on which way to build these properties. Now I'll talk a bit more about the advantages of why we went for timber frame over standard, but before I do that, let me just take you through the factory, show you the different materials, how they're putting them all together, and you'll see on the screen a lot of that footage coming up that we've pre-recorded, so let me take you through and show you around. So before ordering my timber frame, I obtained multiple quotes and I did quite a lot of research into which timber frame company I wanted to use, and the price variances were perhaps somewhere between 10 to 20% discrepancies between different companies. Now, one of the key things if you're building timber frame structures is to make sure that the manufacturer, the company that you're going to use for the design, supply and erect process is accredited by the STA, which stands for the Structural Timber Frame Association. This particular firm here, Target Timber Systems, they have what's called gold status or gold membership. And essentially they get audited in terms of the process, and that starts right at the very beginning of where they order their materials and the sustainability of where they order it. You know, if you're felling trees, if you're cutting trees down and you're providing timber, are they planting new saplings to replace that timber and all that sorts of stuff. So a really detailed, thorough process from start to finish. You know, who works here, are they safe, their health and safety processes. You can see from behind me here, we've got a load of the timber studs. As I said, my timber studs are 140mm thick, but what you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it from the colour, is that all of the timber frame is treated, okay? And then the next thing, which is really important, not all timber frame companies do this, but when they make a cut in the timber frame, so if they're cutting it, you've then compromised the treated wood. The reason you treat timber is essentially to stop moisture soaking into the wood. So they spray it with a treatment. If you cut the wood, that area is then compromised. What they do here at Target Timber is they then spray that cutted area, so even the areas that have been cut are fully treated. And when they put insulation into the timber frame closed panel, the tolerance of how that insulation is inserted is millimetre perfect. And that is how, along with a load of other procedures, that is how they've managed to keep renewing their gold status at the STA. And it's a brilliant process. I'm going to show you the kind of loop of how everything is built here. So if you just follow me and we'll walk around together, and it'll be interesting to show you. But you've got timber studs, which make up the main structure. Again, a load more timber here. If you look here, on my particular properties, because I have neighbouring properties which are quite close in proximity, I had to have a fire report done, because obviously building your houses, majority of building your houses out of timber, there's a higher risk of fire, and OSB is not a fire protective board. So parts of my structure are actually built using a fireboard, which you'll see here. It looks a bit like a cement board. It's still 9mm, and that essentially would slow down massively if there was ever a fire. So that's there. So we've got some of that. You've got a load of OSB behind, lots of, you'll see the panel shortly, but part of my building has a lot of OSB in it as well. Coming through here, load more timber. Behind me here, you'll see all the 120mm PIR insulation. So obviously they buy this in huge bulk at a massive discount saving to what we could buy this from your local merchant, and then they cut it precisely to size, all using the drawings based on which houses they're essentially building here. So I'll tell you what's really interesting is you come to a place like this and you hear in the UK that we've got this massive shortage of house building, nowhere near what it needs to be, and this huge demand for stock, and you just think, you know, what an amazing solution for something like this timber frame structure to be able to solve those problems, because, you know, they can build hundreds of houses here and they can get them out so quickly, but we still have that major problem with house building in the UK. Timber frame seems to be a great solution to building lots of houses quickly, and it's come along drastically over the years. A lot of people think timber frame is you know, going to fall down and it's not strong. New developers and a lot of the big house builders, timber frame is the route that they use. So take you through over here. What you'll see behind me is a load of the areas where they cut the timber. So this is where they cut the studs, and they've got all their measurements. This firm here has been going, I think, for about 14 years. Prior to that, a lot of the people that worked here were at another timber frame company, so they've got sort of decades of years between them. But it's systemised, it's cutting timber. Once they've then cut the timber, they're sort of moving it through the stages, so they're gluing and they're nailing, and it's all a process. Again, insulation. So OSB, now I didn't know this about OSB, but if you go to a local builder's merchant, there's actually different grades of OSB, and normally if you run your hand over the cheaper OSB boards, you get splinters in your hands. This stuff here is a structural grade OSB 3, I think the board is, and you run your hand over it, it's completely smooth because they've used lots of resin to make it really strong, and it's a quality board, and all of that sort of stuff is checked. So for example, this wood, I don't know if you can see, again, it's got a green finish to it, and that's because where they've cut this, they've sprayed it with a treatment, again, to keep the moisture out. But I was talking to the chap here who runs this construction department, and he essentially was telling me that when this timber is delivered, they check the moisture of the wood, and if it's not between a certain level, they actually refuse to accept the delivery because they don't want wet wood. It has to be of a certain moisture content. So it's such incredible attention to detail. Come through over here. I was asking about the saws. These saws, they work for 8 to 10 hours a day sometimes, and I asked about maintenance, and I was seeing, you know, how often they have to sharpen the blades, and it's incredible the use that these saws have got. What was quite incredible about Target, I thought maybe some of this would be robotic and automated, but there's lots of men here using their hands and physically putting these timber frames together. It's incredible to actually see it. Come through. So yeah, you can see timber frame being cut. I'll take you through over here. And it's all moving through, and I sort of was asking, how do you stop errors, and how do you make sure that things are done exactly? And one of the things that they do here is each person that's cutting has the measurements and the sizes and the drawings, And as it gets moved to the next stage, they then check the last person's cutting. So it's like a constant process of vetting. And they were laughing and joking at me, saying, you know, if someone's made a mistake, they go back and find out who actually done it, and that person gets told off. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, come through over here. So yeah, lots of saws. And the other question I asked, I looked at this stack and I thought, bloody hell, what a load of wastage. You know, this is all offcuts of OSB, look. And I thought, what are they going to do with all of that? Are they just going to bin it, or what do they do with it? But they have an answer for that here at Target. Come and have a look. They create loads of little packers, yeah? They said normally you'd spend £1 to get one of these packers, but they make them all themselves. So no wastage at all, very little wastage, so incredible. These are all the jobs that they're lining up. Everything gets numbered and labelled. And it's all put together following drawings. You can see all the drawings here. And then you can see from behind me here the different benches and how they're erecting everything. You've got a chap over here who's nailing a membrane or a vapor barrier on, and then there's people over here that are cutting and fitting insulation. I've checked that. I'll put on the screen now a process of someone actually fitting that insulation in. It's incredible to see how tight they get the insulation into the timber frame. Follow me through this way. Now these boards, these closed panels and open panels, they weigh quite, you know, they're very heavy. And when they're actually trying to lift them up, obviously that would be backbreaking to do that just with human power. So essentially what they do, they've got this hoist or crane, and they tie these little ropes here. Look, I don't know if you can see that, but they put these ropes onto them, which allows them to hoist that up into the air and flip the panels over. So once they've done vapor barrier, they then can do a breathable membrane on the other side or fit the insulation. So it's all, you know, a proper system and a process. It's incredible. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's pop outside now and I will show you my timber frame and the extent of all the panels outside. They're actually ready to go for delivery. Come and follow me outside. Oh, actually, just briefly, I don't know if you can see that there. That is a flexible insulation, and Rockwall's the brand. In my properties, because there's 4 houses and there's a party wall between each of them, we've opted to have the gap in between each house, which is like 50 mil. We've opted to have insulation in that, just to provide good insulation between each of the properties as well. And it helps with soundproofing, thermal bridging, air tightness and acoustics and all that sort of stuff. So really good. Right, so we're outside, and a lot of this stuff that you can see here behind me is my timber frame. It's walls, it's stud partitions, it's load-bearing walls, it's structural walls, and all designed. You can see all the ropes so they can hoist it up into the air using a crane, which we'll have on the site to bring all the panels together. Now, some of the stuff that's quite important to note is when you're taking timber frame to site, if you don't have the right access, then some of these lorries, you know, if we could, we'd have this all delivered on one lorry, but our site actually has a sort of restricted front access. And so we're having this delivered out on 5 different smaller vehicles, which is fine. It will get taken off. Next week, we will be putting down our sole plate and a bit of damp membrane onto the block up stand. And then the following day, we'll start to have the main closed panel ground floor walls all erected and put together, and slowly they'll come up. Now over here in timber frame, okay, just because you've got timber frame doesn't mean you can completely get rid of steel and cement and bricks. All of that stuff is still needed to build properties. Now in my properties we have a limited amount of steel. They're not anywhere near as much steel as if we were doing a standard masonry construction with block and a cavity and brick. So that's my steel there, and it's all ready to go. So one of the main things that's for people that are keen and interested in sustainability of building houses, timber is one of the most eco-friendly products that you could build a house out of. Essentially, you know, you're cutting down a tree, and every time a tree is cut down, they're essentially planting 2 new saplings to replace that timber, as opposed to, say, concrete, which takes 5 times the amount of energy to create concrete as it does to create timber. So for those who are looking to build sustainable, eco-friendly, self-build houses, timber frame seems to be the route to go and what most people are doing now. So you've got some limited steel there, and then the majority of all of that that's packed up is for my project. So if you can see, the stuff with the vapor barrier on it is the closed panel, external walls. All the stuff that doesn't have a vapor barrier is internal partitions. Now, if I just go through, I've made some notes here on my phone, and what I wanted to do is just give you some of the main advantages for those people who are a bit hesitant, or they're sort of thinking, should I use timber frame or not? I've written down some of the advantages, and these kind of were the things that got me across the line to use timber frame. As I said, every structure I've previously built has not been timber frame. It's the first time I've delved into doing this, and things I've written down are, the first one is speed, because as I said, I've literally paid for my timber frame and it's been created off site, and I've managed to get on with construction. And if you read stuff online, it says typically if you use a timber frame structure, you'll save 25 to 30% on your construction timeline. And speed, a lot of people think, well, why does it matter if it takes a bit longer? Well, if you're doing a development project, you typically will have a finance product, development finance or a self-build loan. And that costs money, and it's normally interest paid per day. So if we save 3 months on site by having this built off site, we save 3 months in development finance costs, which will outweigh or save you a huge amount of money essentially. So that was one of the first things, the speed of which we could get things moving. In terms of thermal insulation, now the other route which we looked at was having a block, a large cavity, filling that cavity up with Celotex or Kingspan or one of those equivalent PIR insulations, and then having a brick on the outside. Now, believe it or not, you would have to have a very large cavity, 200 to 300 mil cavity full of insulation to get the same UV value as what you would get out of using a timber frame system. In the timber frame, you have the insulation fitted into the 140 mil stud, and the UV values are great because of the way it's done in a factory and the way they use vapor barriers and breathable membranes, rather than you trying to do that yourself on a site essentially. So thermal insulation is pretty amazing. On my particular products, we're getting, and this is without putting any insulated back plasterboard internally, we're getting 0.17 UV value, which is pretty good. The other thing that you get is you get a great air tightness, because as I said, it's the way that it's made in that closed panel construction. You get great air tightness, you get great sound insulation, and you've got low thermal bridging because of the way that it's built. So that's all great. Sustainability I've mentioned, which is pretty good. Acoustics, obviously one of the things when building new houses, you have to have sound tests, and those sound tests typically cover off, they're looking at airborne and impact sound tests. Now, if you've got timber frame and there's a void and then there's brickwork and on the inside there's barriers and vapors and all the things that are going into it, and then you've got flooring down, the way that it's put together using cavities between each house, we're already improving our sound insulation between the properties. So there's still work to be done. We'll still be using blue plasterboard, and we'll still be staggering, and we'll still be doing lots of sealant and that sort of stuff, but we're already halfway there in terms of acoustic. Now, the other thing I thought was quite interesting, or perhaps one of the downsides I'd say maybe to timber frame, which was a bit of a consideration, is if you were doing a self-build and you wanted to adapt that self-build property at a later date. With timber frame, once it's built, it's a bit different to standard construction in that you could take down a wall, a load-bearing wall, and insert a steel and adapt the property in the future. With timber frame, once you've had it constructed and brought to site, if you then want to make adaptations, it's not that simple, because you've got line and point loads. It's been designed specifically to be that way, and it could be adapted, but you need to go and check everything really thoroughly to be able to adapt the timber frame, because you don't know exactly where the line and point loads are, and you need to look at the plans and involve a structural engineer and all that sort of stuff. So I suppose that's the only downside. But then saying that, if you're building new build properties that are of a good spec and a good size, why would people want to extend them or adapt them anyway? So these are the ceiling joists behind me over in a different section of the Target Timber Systems site. And what you've got here is metal structural joists. Now, typically you'd have 9x2s, 7x2s that would run as your joists. And then what you would have to do for services, you have to drill through those joists to run your soil, your electric cables and all that sort of stuff. Now, what we've gone for, and it costs a little bit more money to do this, but we've had the metal joists rather than the eye joists. An eye joist is essentially two of these with a piece of wood in between, and then you still have to drill through that. This allows, I don't know if you can see that, but you can run a soil pipe through there, you can run your electrical cables through there, and it's, if anything, it's even stronger than your normal 7x2s or 9x2s because you've got this metal structure. So it's all checked again by a structural engineer, and this is a great way, an advanced technology for building ceilings to allow you to run all your services through. So behind me here, I've got all of the flooring for the 4 houses. Now, there's different brands of T&G floor that will click together. Not sure if you can see that here, but this is a brand called Egger Protect. And the guy who's the manager here at the site, he absolutely raves about this stuff. He was explaining to me that essentially the way it clicks together, it's very safe the way it clicks together. You glue the whole thing together. And unlike some of the other brands where the end part breaks and then you have to glue it and screw it down, it all starts creaking. This is kind of the best product that they've found, and it's completely waterproof on top. So when you're putting timber frame together, naturally we've not gone and spent loads of money to have a corrugated roof or tin hat on our scaffolding. We've left that open to the elements, and we're aiming to get the houses built really quickly and felt and battened to keep it watertight. So naturally in the UK, I don't know what the stats are, does it rain every 1 in 3 days in the UK? We're hoping that these will stay waterproof, but according to the guy here, that these can be rained on for 40 days, and as long as they're fitted correctly with all of the glue and put together in the right way, they'll still last and they won't get wet. Some of the other types of T&G flooring has a peel on it, like and then you peel it off at the end, and he recommends this brand here, Egger Protect. He said it's the best out there. So apparently it's double the price. 40 odd quid a sheet, I believe, compared to some of the other stuff you might be able to buy. It's 22 mil thick, it's not 18 mil thick, you can see that there. And it says, look, enhanced moisture resistant flooring. So that will all get delivered to site very shortly. So thank you for watching the video. I hope this has given you an insight into timber frame construction and why I chose this over standard construction. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff, and I'll see you at the next one.